Hey, good morning, everyone. How you doing? I hope everyone's doing well this morning. Okay, this morning I want to talk about the midterm elections coming up. Sadly, I think a lot of people go to the polls uninformed or misinformed. I've heard some real doozies come out of people's mouths. I'm a Republican because my daddy was a Republican. Well, that doesn't make any sense. you know, uh, sadly, I think a lot of people go to the polls and then they just don't have a clue. Maybe they're going based on some crap they heard on television too, guys. That's stuff you hear on TV is bull crap. So if you're on the fence or if you're not sure, if you should be voting for Republicans or Democrats, I hope this video helps you out to go to the poll and make a better decision, a little more informed decision. So I'm going to start by talking just a little bit about the Republican Party that was established in 1854. And I don't know how to pronounce it. Ripon, Ripon, Wisconsin. Ripon, maybe. And it was its entire purpose, its entire reason for being established was anti-slavery. There were a lot of former Whigs, free soldiers, and outraged, you know, citizens that were outraged by the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And what this act did was it established those two territories of Kansas and Nebraska Act. And what this act did was it established those two territories of Kansas, but it also left the door open for slavery to expand to the west and left that decision up to the states as opposed to up to the federal government. And there were a lot of, believe it or not, there were a lot of Democrats that even wanted to end slavery at that time. And of course, the entire Republican Party wanted to end slavery. So what that did was that split the Democrats in half. The Northern Democrats and the Southern Democrats were split in half. So naturally, with half of the Democrats voting for president, it was a shoe-in for Abraham Lincoln. He was elected pretty easily, and even before they had a chance to inaugurate Lincoln, 7 of the Southern states seceded from the Union, and therefore it began the Civil War. Um, let's talk about that president there, Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, was also the man who penned the Emancipation Proclamation. Uh, During the presidency of Lincoln, they also won a supermajority in the House and the Senate. And so they were able to pass a lot of stuff through, including the 13th Amendment on December 18th, 1865, that abolished slavery. Now, Lincoln was a pretty smart feller. He wanted I forget exactly why he wanted a Democrat as a vice president, but he had a Democrat vice president by the name of Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Johnson, after the assassination, Andrew Johnson was trying to again impede on the rights of the colored folks. And Republicans, even with Johnson in there as president, passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed birthright citizenship and equal protection under the law for everyone. It was also the Republican Party who passed the 15th Amendment later, granting black men the right to vote. Now, it'll take a while for the women, but black men got the right to vote. This was a Republican pushed bill. And believe it or not, it was a Democrat, uh, Lyndon B. Johnson, who passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. However, it wasn't easy. The Southern bloc of Democrats opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They opposed it strongly, so strongly that they began what's called a filibuster, when somebody stands there and just talks and talks and talks and talks, and it became the longest debate in history at that time. I think it was 75 days they carried this argument on to try to stop. They try to add stuff to the bill like they do nowadays to make it people don't want to vote for it. But eventually it got passed. And of course, the voting lines on that are what you might expect. It was mostly the Republicans who pushed it through, with some of the northern Democrats voting, I'm sure. Enter modern day politics. We're not voting to see about ending slavery. We're voting now on some pretty more important issues, very, very important issues. Most recently, there was a highly contested election, if you want to call it that. And there was a man that was put into the White House. Now, during the 4 years that President Joe Biden was in the White House, one of the first things he did was he dismantled Donald Trump's border policies. He completely did away with the Remain in Mexico policy. And this fueled a huge, huge invasion. Millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants crossed over the border, and the southern border, into the United States. Millions of people. This put a strain on our resources. The Democrats want to give them Social Security, among other things. And, it was already straining. We were already struggling enough. And he let millions of people to come into our country. And during the same period, he was given $175 billion to Ukraine, taxpayer money. So he let millions of people come over the border and gave $175 billion to Ukraine. What was his agenda? Destroy America? Because it sure seems like it was working. But the most damning evidence that I can point out, modern day damning evidence of the Democratic Party is what happened on February the 24th, 2026, during President Trump's State of the Union address. Now, he said this, and I am going to quote President Trump here. He said this, quote, "If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens," unquote. Not one single Democrat stood. The Republicans all stood. They clapped, they cheered for 2 minutes, standing ovation. Now, the president didn't ask the Democrats to to clap. He didn't ask them to cheer. He didn't ask for anything other than just stand. Stand and say that you support this statement. Now, by them not standing, they made it crystal clear that they did not support that statement. Well, I got news for you. That is your job. You're elected officials. You're the senators and the representatives in the Congress, and you're elected by the people to represent the people, to be there as a liaison between the people and the federal government. And if you can't stand and say, well, my job is to protect the American citizens, then you're in violation of your oath of office, and you ought to be fired. You ought to be hung for treason. as my personal opinion, if you couldn't stand for that, all you son of bitches ought to have been hung for treason right then and there. It's your job. It's your job. And you couldn't stand an acknowledgement. It's become crystal clear to me that the Democrats do not represent the American citizens. Their only agenda seems to be get Trump at all costs, even if it costs the American citizens. They do not represent us anymore. A few other things about the Democrats: they support gun control. They want to take your guns away. Your guns away. They support abortion on demand. So if you're a Christian, you certainly don't want to vote for that. They support sex change operations for kids. These are some sick people. They support men in women's sports and men in women's bathrooms. And I'm telling you what, given the past, the very root of the Democrats, given their past behaviors and their current behavior, I don't see how any God fearing, God loving, country loving, patriotic American could ever vote for a Democrat for any office. But then again, that's up to you. And I'm just here to give you a little advice, a little knowledge, something that maybe you didn't know, something you heard might help you make a better decision when you get to the polls in November during the midterms. Do we want to handcuff our president, or do we want to give him the power? Ladies and gentlemen, I certainly hope you make the right choices. And I'm just here to try to offer a little bit of help. God bless you. Have a blessed day.
How do I stop? End stream.